How we at? You want me to get people back to the tables? Folks, if we could get back to a table, we're going to go live on, what are we going out live on?
Facebook.
On Facebook? Hey, we're gonna do it 5 minutes from now.
All right. Well, I'll stay live because.
Okay. Just say we're gonna delay it 5 minutes
Yeah.
because we got a lot of people.
Okay.
This is your 5-minute warning. 5-minute warning. So the best presentation you're gonna see tonight. Are you a new member? No, I'm just kidding. Celestial.
Jim is signing autographs. People live cannot get a signed autograph. But.
Oh, very good. Thank you for
That's fine. You got 5 minutes. Oh, you're back. Okay. Mike, everybody 5 minutes. So,
okay.
Yeah, just hold. We got 6 or 7 people on. It keeps changing.
We need
Kristen's
to get a little
on.
stand for
Mike,
that.
yeah, we do. I think I can use one that.
What?
I think I can use one that Garrett's got.
I'm just going to try to find a box. Maybe the Kleenex box.
Can prop it up.
If not, you can go like this.
I put some Kleenex in there to stiffen it up. Maybe you can stick it in there. That's what I got tire glasses.
Yeah, because he's going to talk from right here. So. All right, perfect. Thank you.
Do you want to set it up here?
No, nobody's going to sit here.
Just because it's like
Can you talk to these lovely ladies?
it's okay.
Jim's going to sit here.
I
Yeah.
am. That one's the news. I can tell. That's the one that says, don't go down because you'll never come back up. You know, I did it once. I came back to work and I said, oh, I climbed the dunes. The guy who was just an exercise buff goes, I did it 4 times. I was chasing kids. He was chasing his own kids down. It was insane.
Yeah.
I was being boastful.
Where does he go during?
I don't know.
Like leaves and then
1 minute, folks.
Yeah. He kind of like set stuff up and then he was gone. And I don't know. He came back with a snack. So.
Bob, would you like to do an introduction?
Yeah.
Folks, presentation is about to start. Please give Bob a
All right, thank you for coming.
Since you have extras, I would
To
take
hear Jim DuFresne's presentation. If you haven't seen Jim before, you're in for a treat. He's presented to us before as well as at the Client Adventure Symposium, as they're calling it now. It sounds like they just twisted his arm successfully to present again in March. They've got a date, the 4th, Jim? The 4th of March. So they're going to have an actual live event in person rather than online this year. But again, if you don't know Jim, he's got some great trail maps, some that I've used personally, Jordan Pathway, so all of the kind of local Michigan trail maps you can get here tonight or on his site. When I was up at Isle Royal this summer, used this one, and a lot of people use this. It keeps them up to date, so they're great. He normally talks to us about Michigan, but we asked him to talk about New Zealand this time, so we can all like just dream, yes, about New Zealand, and see how cool that is. So, Jim, come on up. Thank you.
Do you need me to help you shift it, or you know what you want to do?
Maybe.
Okay.
I'm a writer, not a tech guy.
All right, so do you know what slide you want to start on?
Right from the beginning. This one. Go into slideshow.
Because I can't see the bottom.
The foraging class looks good to me. The foraging looks good. I'd like to go to that.
I can sit here and do it. You can just tell me. Sorry, we're having technical difficulties.
They're used to it. What's the issue? Go to monitors. It's not showing up on the right monitor.
No, his Wi-Fi clicker is not working.
Oh, I
so-
got you. Okay.
We'll just go.
Laura can advance for you.
Phil,
Hey Phil, you're on Facebook Live.
Phil, you're sitting in front of the camera.
Okay.
All right.
We got it. Oh, yeah, I will. And, will you turn off the lights? Whoa. Here's the mic. Here it is. First of all, it's great to be here. The last time I was here is several years ago before the pandemic. And,
Use the mic, please. Sorry.
Before the pandemic.
Before the pandemic.
Thank you.
Anyhow, whoa. This is a great show
You gotta
because
turn that down.
I love New Zealand, and after the show, I'll do a quick Q&A up here, and then I'll migrate over to my table and try to sell you guys as many books and maps as I can. They make wonderful Christmas stockings, and they get them personally autographed by the author. So that's my only commercial push. So let's begin.
Hey Jim, is that you?
You're gonna find out, aren't you?
In 1980, I was young, single, and I had a full head of hair. I was also very adventurous. I was living in Juneau, Alaska at the time and needed to escape that claustrophobic city when an Australian friend of mine told me, "You need to visit New Zealand." I knew almost nothing about the country. But I went anyhow. And I fell in love with New Zealand almost from the minute I stepped off the plane. I spent 3 months down under that first trip, long enough to skip an Alaskan winter. I've been returning ever since, looking for more of that adventure I found the first time I arrived. To most people, New Zealand is Middle Earth, the setting of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and the home of director Peter Jackson. To anglers, particularly fly fishermen, New Zealand is legendary for its trout fishing, browns and rainbows. Still to others, New Zealand is the birthplace of the bungee jump, and they love high energized, high octane activities down there. But to me, New Zealand has always been this destination for great escapes into a wondrous wilderness. Truly a place where it's easy to leave the road and go tramping for days on end. That's because New Zealand has a strong outdoor culture and heritage. When they need to escape on the weekend, they fill a rucksack with some provisions, rain gear, and they go tramping, what we refer to as backpacking, on tracks, their word for trails. Tramping is as much of their heritage as a good 7-day cricket match, having a beer at the local corner pub, and of course, cheering their beloved all-black rugby team, especially when they're playing South Africa. New Zealand is a long, narrow country, located across the Tasman Sea from Australia. It's further south than most of Australia, so it lacks the tropical appeal and the warm seas and reefs of its neighbors. What it has that Australia lacks are mountains in the Southern Alps. Mountains from one end of the country to the other. Mountains with high alpine passes and snow slopes that in the winter or summer offer some of the best downhill skiing in the Southern Hemisphere. Because New Zealand is a long, narrow, very mountainous country, there's places in here where you can spend the morning exploring the glacier, then drive a few hours and spend the afternoon on a track lined with palm trees over the Tasman Sea. The other reason for the great tramping is because New Zealand is a country 2/3 the size of California, yet has a population of only 5 million. And the vast majority of those live in the northern half of the North Island. California has a population of 40 million. That's why New Zealand could preserve so much of their land as national parks and state forests, more than 1/3. No other country in the world, including the U.S., has such a high percentage of protected land. What New Zealand doesn't have are bears. Actually had no mammals at all until the British showed up and introduced things like possums, stouts, red deer, and even elk. Doesn't mean you won't be, when you're tramping, you won't encounter a few large mammals along the tracks, but they're pretty domesticated. You just keep your distance, so they won't charge you or anything. The other thing New Zealand doesn't have are snakes. No snakes. And most unusual, it doesn't have anything that's poisonous, unlike Australia, which seems half its animals and insects possess enough venom to quickly end your tramp. But there is one thing I must warn you of. That when you encounter it, you immediately stop. You back up slowly, and then you run. Oh, New Zealanders love to tell us Americans, oh, Vegemite, it's just like your peanut butter. It's not. It's a bacterial extract that's blackened with an incredibly strong odor and taste. It took me 20 years before I could spread it on my toast in the morning with a New Zealander. And that's because there was no peanut butter around. Like the mountains, New Zealand has tracks from one end of the country to the other. With a single ferry ride, you can literally trek from Cape Virginia, the most northern point on the North Island, to Invercargill at the south end of the South Island. Tracks range in all types and lengths, Many are developed with planking and bridges that are well posted and easy to follow. Many in this mountainous country are a crest of an alpine ridge. Yet you carefully tiptoe along until a sign tells you it's time to descend. And some are true wilderness experiences. A slog through deep mud in a forest where you think you're on the track, but you're not really positive. What makes tramping so distinct and such an unusual experience from backpacking in Michigan is the country's hut system. Spread across New Zealand, along every major track and a lot of obscure ones, are almost 1,000 backcountry huts. They're generally spaced out every 4 or 5 hours, and some are capable of easily accommodating up to a couple dozen trampers or trekkers. Others are so small that maybe they only have 4 bunks and a tiny little wood-burning stove in case it snows that night. There's no more enjoyable moment as a tramper than hiking 4 to 6 hours and then seeing the hut where you're bunking up for the night. You sit outside after you arrive and you take those boots off, boots that may have endured a few bridgeless stream crossings that day. Then you strip off those wet socks and coax one of your mates to go inside and make a billy of tea. Yeah. That's all you need at that moment. Most huts, especially the larger ones, have a commons area where there's a stove and tables, and you can see the metal countertops, so you can set up your stove to cook dinner. In the, I think this is in order. Yeah. This is the commons area, and this door, there's a door on the opposite side of this particular hut, were bunk rooms. And they would hold anywhere from 4 to 12 bunks for sleeping. A 24 bunk hut is a fairly large one. In the older ones, they still use bunk shelves. So they'd have a shelf with like 4 or 5 mattresses across it. That's where you would sleep. The stove, everyone has heat though. And a lot of them have that wire fencing because everybody lays out their wet clothing and socks. And you sure don't want to burn them by the next morning. What is important to know in New Zealand is everybody stays in the hut. There are a few tracks, better known ones, that do offer some camping. And some people do bring their tents. But fundamentally, everybody stays in the huts. It's a communal setting where you share counter space and tables, and it's been raining all day. Possibly a shelf bunk designed for 4, but you might have 6 or 7 in it. Some people, particularly Americans, can be uncomfortable in such settings. I've always found it to be one of the best aspects of tramping. Often the same handful of people will be hiking the track, and every night you all stay at the same hut, sharing your experiences, examining what the next day will bring. And the last day when you finish, everybody are such good friends that you head to the first pub down the road. The other aspect I like about New Zealand is the thermal activity. New Zealand is part of the Pacific Ring of Fire that includes Japan, Alaska, even California. One of the most popular tourist destinations is Rotorua in North Island, a town that features boiling mud and geysers and public bathhouses. But I've done a half-dozen tramps where we've arrived at a hut, and from the logbook, we're in that, just down the river, there's a hot spring bubbling out of the banks. You can always find it, because trampers before you have arranged the rocks into a nice pool with flat boulders to sit on. It's a jacuzzi in the middle of the wilderness. What else could you possibly need? One drawback in New Zealand is that it's on the other side of the world from Michigan. I generally fly to LAX. And because I'm blessed with a brother who lives in Huntington Beach, California, I often will spend a day before boarding a Air New Zealand flight to Auckland. It's not as bad as flying to Sydney if you've done that, but it's still a 10-hour nonstop flight. Excuse me. I almost always fly into Auckland because it's easy from the international airport to jump. The domestic airport's right next door, and you can jump on a domestic flight after you arrive and head straight to the South Island. That's the beauty of New Zealand. It's small. You really don't need to rent a car if you're going there to primarily tramp. There will be transportation, either public or a private company, running trampers out to whatever track they want to hike. Or in some cases, water taxis. The real beauty of backpacking New Zealand, however, are the people, who often refer to themselves as Kiwis. They're friendly, helpful, they love Americans, if you can imagine that, and they speak English. This is my daughter with a New Zealander we hiked with for 5 days on the Queen Charlotte track. As beautiful and as interesting as that track was, getting to know Fred was the high point of the walk. Because of the growing popularity of tramping, back in the 1990s, the most famous tracks in New Zealand were set up as great walks. And that included developing reservation systems to keep them from getting overrun from primarily overseas visitors. The government agency that controls all the tracks, huts, and parks is the Department of Conservation, that's affectionately known as DOC in New Zealand. They have an incredible website. It's probably one of the first places if you're contemplating a trip to New Zealand where you should go and start digging out information. The second thing you ought to do is buy my book. I love calling it the world's best-selling guidebook to backpacking New Zealand. It is, but it's handled by Lonely Planet. And let's face it, outside of New Zealand is the only really book available devoted to backpacking New Zealand. Once you get to the country, there's a lot of other smaller publishers in New Zealand that do some great books, but mine's the best. Two of the great walks are not actually walks at all. The Wanganui Journey is located in the North Island and is a 3-day canoe paddle along the Wanganui River, the only river in New Zealand where an extended overnight paddle could take place. The Paparoa track in the west coast near Greymouth in the South Island. The Paparoa is the only shared track used by both trampers and mountain bikers. It's a 3-day walk or a 2-day ride through the Paparoa Range over in alpine saddles and past gold mining remnants from the 1800s. The rest of the great walks are walks. Two are located in North Island. Lake Whakakaramona is a 46-kilometer 4-day tramp around one of New Zealand's largest lakes. It's located on the eastern half of the North Island in Urea National Park. There's little alpine in this walk. It's an easy walk. Not easy, it's a very moderately handled walk. Most of it skirts this beautiful lake or winds through an incredible lush semi-rainforest. One of the most famous walks in New Zealand is the Tongariro Northern Circuit. A tramp of 4 days and 41 kilometers. It's located in the heart of the North Island, just off of Taupo, which is a pretty good tourist destination. Tongariro National Park is the first national park New Zealand set up, 3 years after we set up Yellowstone National Park. Many people will start at the headquarters, Makapakapaka Village, and then do the 4-day walk, staying overnight at 3 different huts. But what has happened in the last 10, 12 years is that they've developed an incredible day walk, and they drop you off at one end, and you cut across the amazing thermal area of this national park. And it's just a day, and buses will drop you off, and they'll pick you up at Highway 47 to the north there. 1 day walk off the best scenery in this national park, and it's amazing. It's green and blue pools, it's rocks that are steaming. You literally hike along the edge of a volcano. And that's called New Zealand's greatest day walk. The Abel Tasman Coast Track is on the North Island in the Abel Tasman National Park. It's the most popular walk in the country. It's located in an area of New Zealand. That, for a country that's can be incredibly rainy and windy at times, it has about the best weather you can find. Most of this 4-day walk is along beaches and coves and bays. Incredibly level, really easy to do. It's so popular and it's so accessible by the sea that a transportation system of water taxis serves this coastline of this national park. You don't have to do all 4 days. You can just do 2 days, get dropped off here, get picked up there. You can do 1 day, just with a day pack on, and hike along a certain section on it, getting dropped off and picked up in the same day. The Milford Track is a 4-day, 54-kilometer trail in Fiordland National Park. Fiordland is the largest national park in New Zealand by far, and it's the largest national park in the Southern Hemisphere. The Milford is known as the most beautiful walk in the world. And that might be stretching a bit, but it's not far off. And New Zealanders embrace it because it was the first commercial track set up in the 1800s. 2 guides had cut the track over this incredibly scenic area and were guiding tourists across it. The Milford begins at Glade House. Most people come up from Tiano ferry, get to Glade House and begin hiking. And it's about a 4-day hike. The high point is when you go across McKinnon Pass. And then you drop on the other side of the pass into another valley and follow the Arthur River out to Sandfly Point. Sandflies in New Zealand are basically your museums. But you don't have to stay very long at Sandfly Point, because now you're on the edge of the Milford Sound, probably one of the most incredible areas in New Zealand. And a water taxi will take you from the end of your hike to the main road where you catch transportation back to Tiano. Or, if you're really adventurous, you can rent a kayak at Sandfly Point and paddle across stunning Milford Sound. This is my favorite, the Root Burn. The Root Burn is a 3-day walk, and it's split between Mount Aspiring National Park and Fiordland. You start in one, end in the other. The departure point is Queenstown. Queenstown is pretty much the capital of New Zealand downhill skiing in the winter, and in the rest of the year, it's a mecca for trekkers. There's a zillion great tracks and tramps that take off, and there's all kinds of transportation to them. The Milford, you would start at the Rootburn shelter and then hike the first day. Most people go to Rootburn Falls Hut. Then you cross, it's another classic New Zealand track in that. Then you cross Harris Saddle and you dump into another valley into the other side. You end up at the Divide shelter, and most people end up picking up transportation and continuing on to Tiano. It's really tough to get to the Divide shelter and try to make it back to Queenstown. Rootburn Falls Hut is great, but the next day is the stunner. You pray that you have good weather. Rootburn Falls Hut is just at the tree line, so the whole day you're above the tree line. You begin by climbing up gradually through this treeless area, passing beautiful alpine lakes. And then you reach Harris Saddle. And then from there, you tread across a ridge for the entire afternoon. The views, if the weather's even halfway decent, are stunning. The Rockacora track is in Stewart Island. Stewart Island is, Invercargill is the southern point of the South Island. Stewart Island's just across the straits there. And it's one of the newer Great Walks, and it's a 3-day, 32-kilometer loop that, there you go, Stewart Island. That it's not as overwhelming in regards to getting reservations and stuff as the Rootburn or the Milford. My first time in Stewart Island, you actually arrive in Half Moon Bay and you take off and return to there, this small little village. My first time back in the, I think it was 82, I was there. It was a 10-day walk around the whole island we did. It was one of the most magnificent and hard treks I've ever done. We had to carry one hell of a lot of food. But there was times when I was in Stewart Island that I felt like I was truly on the edge of the world. Once you leave Half Moon Bay, it's pretty much wilderness. The one thing that Stewart Island does have, if you do venture this far south, and it takes a little more time and expense, is that it has a very lush forest. Surprisingly, it has very lush forest. But the bird life is terrific, including kiwis. So if you do this track at night, you can take off and go down the track with your flashlight and see if you can spot a kiwi, which I have often down there. Kiwis in the rest of the country are a little bit more scarce. But one of my favorite great walks, maybe my favorite, I don't know, is the one I sent my son and his wife when they went to New Zealand a few years ago. And that's the Kepler track. The Kepler is located in Fiordland National Park. It was built in 1988 to celebrate the centennial of the New Zealand's first national park. But it also was a way to relieve pressure on the Milford and the Rootburn. It was built from scratch, whereas most of the rest of the Great Walks are already there and they were simply upgraded. Thus, the Kepler has to be one of the most best designed tracks in this country. For starters, they eliminated the need for special transportation out to some remote trailhead. The Kepler begins and ends on the edge of Tiano. You can go to the Fiordland Visitor Center in Tiano, go up to the desk and say, where does the Kepler start? And they'll turn to a big picture window and they'll point. It's right there. It starts right there. It's great. Naturally, it's a loop, a 4-day, 60-kilometer walk. Again, you can see you start in Tiano, you end there. It begins by skirting Lake Tiano for 4 kilometers. You could jump in a water taxi and you could skip this portion, but it serves as a nice warm-up to what lies ahead. You get a nice feeling about it. You're hiking along a beach. It's really scenic. And then, after 4 kilometers, you reach Brood Bay, and you realize you're leaving the lake shore and the climbing's just starting. It's a pretty steady, unforgiving uphill trek through the forest. That's my daughter-in-law. No one's going to tell her she couldn't do it. Just when you think it's never going to end, you break out of the forest into a magnificent tussock alpine to a view of almost the entire Lake Tiano, including where you'd already trekked. It's one of those classic moments when tramping in New Zealand, breaking out above the tree line. You can see the tree line there, right on the edge. And the views are stunning. Even better, in another 10 or 15 minutes, you round a corner and there's Loxmoor Hut, where you're going to be spending your first night. Loxmoor is one of the largest huts you'll ever stay in New Zealand. It has 55 bunks on 2 levels. It has a drying room. And boy, if it's been raining all day, you go in that drying room and everybody's reindeer and sleeping bags and everything else are all strung up there. And of course, a hut this big has a huge common area, kitchen area, with tables and kitchen counters and gas cookers. In the camper, you wouldn't even need to bring a stove or fuel, lighting your load even more. Or for that matter, even a thermarest pad, because they have mattresses there, and water. And they have windows in this really big kitchen that overlooks the lake below. Even better, if the day is nice and the outdoor is the outdoor deck, the perfect place for happy hour if your husband hauled up a sack of wine or to catch the sunset after dinner. You go to bed that night praying that tomorrow is going to be a clear, windless day. The next morning when the hut warden posts the weather report at 8:30 a.m. and you realize your prayers have been answered, you waste no time hitting the trail. From almost the start to the finish, this is your alpine day. And in the morning is the best. When your legs are fresh and the sun is rising behind you and the colors are deep and rich. You begin by sidling the ridges of the Kepler Mountains. Views everywhere. But soon, you're walking along the crest of them with a glorious 360-degree view all around you. This is classic New Zealand ridge walking. You can see the trail. Yeah, this is the trail. Actually, you can't see it, but it pretty much goes along this entire ridge. For some people, especially backpackers from a flat land like Michigan, ridge walking in a lot of New Zealand can be a little nerve-wracking at times. But the Kepler is well cut, a wide footpath where steps have been built when needed. It's amazing. We've never done ridge walking. It's just, and then you can do it in lots of places around the world. But it's just, and if your day is clear, it's one of the most amazing backpacking experiences you ever have, period. By early afternoon, you come to Hanging Valley, where there's an emergency shelter, a picnic table, and what we would call an outhouse. In New Zealand, they call them long drops. Which I always thought was a rather appropriate name. They also call them loos, and there are times when you run into another tramper on the couple or going the opposite direction, will say, there's a loo with a view just up the trail. He's right. Especially if you leave the door open on this one, the views, that seat of that long drop are amazing. Not long after Hanging Valley, though, you begin a steady descent, most of it in the forest, and in an hour or two you arrive at Irish Burn Hut. Irish Burn is not as dramatic as the setting of Locksmore Hut, but it's still nice, and it's near Irish Burn, the stream where there's a waterfall and you can soak your feet after a long day in the boots. The next day the walk is easy. You follow Irish Burn through a valley and a beech forest before reaching Matamura Hut. A little anti-dramatic, maybe, but it's an easy day. When you arrive at the hut, you drop your backpack on a bunk, you throw on a shorts or even a swimsuit if you have it, because right there, 10 minutes away, is Lake Manapori. What a beach. And you haven't taken a shower in 3 days. On the fourth day, this perfect track ends in Tiano, of course. You're elated. The sense of accomplishment of this alpine crossing is amazing for any flatlander from the Midwest. But even better, within 30 minutes of this track ending, which is here, you're looking at them. You're sitting outside a pub with a nice cold mug of that wonderful New Zealand beer. Yeah, this is the best designed track I've ever walked on. One of my all-time favorite tramps, though, was the Heafy track, which I did with my daughter. Today, the Heafy is a great walk. After being designated and upgraded in 2013, it officially became the longest great walk at 78 kilometers that takes 4 to 5 days to walk. But it wasn't when we walked it. It was a secondary trail still that featured those small, cozy huts found along most of the tracks in New Zealand. The Heafy is located in Kangaroo National Park, second largest after only Fiordland. The track was cut in the 1800s, when gold was discovered on what was then the remote and hard-to-reach West Coast. The gold rush faded quickly, and eventually the Heafy became a footpath to the Tasman Sea. In the early 1970s, plans were announced to turn this still obscure track into a road to connect Nelson on Golden Bay with Carmia on the west coast. That's when the Heafy ignited the modern New Zealand conservation movement. Widespread protests quickly led to the government shelving the road and saving the track. This is so typical of New Zealanders. To a lot of Kiwis, hiking the Heafy at least once is something of a pilgrimage in honor of their outdoor heritage. My daughter was in college when she flew down to New Zealand to join me. I'd been in New Zealand for 3 months and she had 3 weeks, her Christmas break at MSU. So she flew from Detroit to LAX, jumped on a plane that night for Auckland. When I met her the next morning, we rushed across the domestic airport, got on another plane for Nelson in the South Island. A day and a half after she arrived in New Zealand, halfway around the world from where she departed, she was standing on the start of the Heafy track. Jet lag is always a problem for overseas travelers. But on the Heafy, it's particularly brutal because of all the climbing is done on the first day. This This is her when we reached the shelter for lunch, and that is not her backpack, that's mine. Still, I always find jet lag to be worse when you fly from west to east. But it's something you have to take into account on any trip to New Zealand. But being young and excited about her adventure, she rebounded quickly in the afternoon when the track leveled out. Kids always do. And we reached the Perry Saddle Hut. After a long first day on the track, she thought it was a Hilton with the benches and bunks. Bunks were so inviting. A lot of people will ask me, when you go tramping in New Zealand, especially when you're down there for 2 or 3 months, what do you eat on the tracks? Actually, New Zealand has one of the best freeze-dried companies, backcountry cuisine I've ever had. It's terrific. And once in a while, I'll get a package of that. But mostly I eat the same thing I eat here. Go to the supermarket and buy continental pasta and sauce meals. Quick cooking really is. And being so close to Southeast Asia, New Zealand's got an incredible selection of ramen noodles, which we all love, you know. And oatmeal in the morning. So I generally don't really, and it's easy, you know, any supermarket will be carrying a lot of this. So it's pretty easy to not even take anything down and just before your first tramp or, you know, for the first track you're going to tackle, pop into a decent grocery store and buy everything you'll need. Our next day, we stepped out of the hut and it was sunny and warm and we were well rested. This is the reason I love those iconic New Zealand huts. You begin every day well rested. You slept on a mattress. You had a decent breakfast and you're dry. No matter how hard it rained the day before, you begin with dry clothing and dry socks. That just makes a world of difference sometimes. The Heafy begins at Brown Hut, which is up in the top, you can see at the top left-hand corner, or excuse me, right-hand corner. And then the first day we went to the Perry Saddle Hut, and we continued down the Saxon Hut, McKay Hut, Heafy Hut, and then out on the west coast. We took 5 days to do it. There was a lot of people doing 4, but 5 was a nice number. On our second day, we crossed Perry Saddle and passed through what they call a subalpine area of the mountains. This is not the Kepler. And at the beginning, the walking was incredibly easy because the Heafy follows an old miner's road left over from the gold rush. Eventually, we returned to the true track, but one that was well planned, even before it was a great walk, and featured bridges. It wasn't long, of course, before Jess encountered her first New Zealand swing bridge. Always an exciting moment. And to answer your question, yes, they do swing. It doesn't matter how many wires they put on, those things swing. Two days before Christmas, we reached the original James McKay Hut. They've replaced it since then, but back then it was a tiny little structure on the edge of the mountains that was incredibly comfortable considering how old and small it was. It's in a bit of a clearing and the views are wonderful. We're literally sitting outside the hut and we're looking at the Tasman Sea during the sunset. And I said to her in the evening, I said, there's next day's destination. You can see the mouth of the Heafy River into the Tasman Sea. That's where we're spending Christmas Eve, I said to Jessica. You begin the day with a descent out of the mountains, and then you cross the Heafy on one of the longest swing bridges I've ever been on. Yeah, there's a lot of swinging on this bridge. On the other side, you follow the Heaphy River right to the Tasman Sea. It's a wonderful change of vegetation as you're constantly dipping into the forest of Nakupan palms, all the way to where the river meets the sea. After it became a great walk, they built this hut where this is the Heaphy hut, where the Heaphy River dumps into the Tasman Sea. Nice hut. This is where we stayed. A great hut. Hut with character. Christmas Eve. There was a couple from Christchurch and a Canadian young man. I really thought he was trying to pick up my daughter that evening, but I'm my dad who was clueless, so I didn't know. Well, we got there fairly early in the afternoon. We moved right along. We got there and grabbed some bunks, threw down our gear, and then headed for the Tasman Sea. You can't swim in the Tasman Sea. The currents are just deadly. But boy, that beach is wide, and you can follow it for miles if you want. We didn't. We just went along the way, and we took our time. We beachcombed. And there was a lot more than just driftwood there. We found starfish, this crab, some interesting shells, and then, at one point, there were some rocks about, I don't know, 5 yards from the shore, and I could see what I just was dying to have. Green whip mussels from New Zealand. Handed Jessica my shoes, took my pocket knife, carefully weighed it out just as far as it needed to go, and got a bunch of them. Christmas Eve dinner. My daughter didn't eat mussels back then, so I got the whole bunch. God, they were good. Steamed them in water, and I even had some little fresh garlic. We had a little wine left from our little sack. We sang Christmas carols with the other 3 people staying there, and we're about as remote as you can get in New Zealand. That evening, Jessica and I watched the sunset. And I said to her, tomorrow is our last day. The track will end. And I said, we're staying at a place called the Last Resort in Carmia. And at noon, they have a Christmas buffet. I said, we can get going by 7:30 in the morning. We can get to Carmia, to the Last Resort, and be in line for the Christmas Day buffet. She's been eating ramen noodles for 5 days, and she thought that was pretty interesting. It was great, too. The next morning, someone woke me up at 6. She said, Dad, we gotta get going. We piled out there. This is one of the most amazing walks in New Zealand because you follow the Tasman Sea the whole way, practically. And it's just beautiful. But my daughter had her heart set on something else, not more scenery. And being a cross-country runner in high school, she motored down the trail, and within an hour, I never saw her again. I took my time because I knew we were going to make it, and the scenery is spectacular. Oh my gosh, the power of the Tasman Sea, and the bluffs, and the lush forest, and the Niku palm tree. It's just amazing. And towards the end, you eventually, the last hour or so, you sort of swing away from the Tasman Sea and you're in the forest. And then you break out this grassy area. And you realize this is the trailhead parking area. And when I broke out of the trees, this is what I saw. Yeah, she'd been waiting for me. So then they had a phone there. We rang up the Last Resort. They sent a van down to to us, and they picked us up. They took us on Christmas Day, mind you. They took us there. We were there like, gosh, 10 o'clock in the morning. So we got our room. It was nice. It was actually had really nice beds and sheets and a hot shower. And the best part, though, is my wife, who really was against this trip because she always felt everybody has to be together at Christmas. She took the effort to send a package down to us to the resort, knowing we were going to be here on Christmas Day, and it was assortment of gifts and stuff for us. The real joy, though, was the buffet, and boy, did we eat. It was held outside. They loved to grill on the barbie, like they do in Australia and New Zealand. Lots of fresh fruits because it was opposite seasons, and salads. But what we really loved the most, sausage rolls. Nothing says New Zealand cuisine like this roll of spicy sausage wrapped in flaky pastry, covered with butter, and you take a bite and the grease just runs down your cheek. What else would you want after a 5-day trek? Nah, really. Must eat two, yeah. Anyhow, it was great. I don't want to mislead anybody. You don't have to do great walks. If you're real, there's zillions of other tracks. There's even private tracks. These are tracks that often utilize large ranching, sheep ranch areas, and 2 or 3 will combine and they'll build a track, 2 or 3 day walk, and the combinations are wonderful. And they're usually set up so you don't have to carry any gear each day. You just take a day pack, and they shuffle your gear to the next stop. You also don't have to stay at a hut at all. You can just do day hikes in New Zealand. See a lot of incredible scenery, reach the tree line and the alpine, and then return to fine combination restaurants in places like Queenstown, Tiano, and Nelson for the evening. But the first step in any adventure in New Zealand is you have to go. You have to want to experience this incredible country with its friendly people and those 60 million sheep, and board a plane and go. You'll never regret it. And you might end up being like me, where you end up down under again and again and again throughout your life. Thank you very much. Anybody have a quick question?
Yeah.
Yes.
Did you ever get a hut where a lot of people snore?
Every hut has a lot of people who snore. The one thing that has happened numerous times is sometimes when it rains, what happens is some people don't leave the hut because it's raining, and other people rush to the hut because it's raining, and then you get this evening of there's just not enough bunks. So you end up sleeping on the floor if you need. You're so happy to have a shelter and a roof, and those are some of the best evenings. And then the next day, everybody will space out and things will get back to normal. But the huts, they cost, they're not free. And on the Great Walks, you really need to reserve, but they've made it fairly easy for Americans to reserve online. So when you get there, and it's all run through Dock, you're insured of getting a spot. They only allow so many people, like on the Milford is the most heavily reserved one. It's the most popular, and the Rupert is very popular as well. But it's easy to set this up, and let's face it, if you're going to New Zealand, you're going to be working on this trip, a few months in advance at least, and you can do that. But,
What's the cost for the hut, for the hut? What's the price range?
The Great Walk ones are probably $15, $20 US dollars per night. The obscured ones, $2 or $3 a night. It just depends on the popularity of the trail and so forth. There's probably still a few free ones out there, but most of them, a lot of them, it's an honesty can there. You just throw your money in. The Great Walks are heavily regulated though, and those are the ones we reviewed. But there's a zillion other walks, and their private walks are pretty interesting. And some are trails that have been set up like I was talking about, and some are guiding companies who build their own huts along like the Rupert or the Milford. Those can be a little pricey, but boy, they fly in great food. They got showers and beds with sheets, and you never carry more than your day pack. So the Milford has, the Rupert, the Greenstone, they have private huts on them, and it's just a different way of going, you know. And
I did that Milford in Reptile.
did you on a private?
It is nice if you get a choice if you're the night before the dinner you want the next night.
I like the fact that they always have beer and wine.
And in the morning they have a spread so you can pack your lunch.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, I never did the Milford guided one, but I did the Rupert and the Greenstone and the Hollyford trip. Anyhow, yeah, it's you know, it was very enjoyable. Yeah.
How many times have you gone?
The first trip was in 1980. The book has been out for almost 40 years. I generally went every 4 years. So so I don't know, whatever that works out to be, 9, 10 times. It's not how many times I went. It's every time I went, I was there for 2 or 3 months. I know, it was amazing. I get on a plane thinking, going to New Zealand, yes. Yeah, it just was, I just got, and the book did really well. So, you know, New Zealand tourism was really anxious for me to come down, and they helped me. They helped me with my airfare, and I always got one of those tickets that was any available room in first class. You know, I got it. You know, and a lot of times I didn't, but a few times I did. And the last time I went, I did, and it was by then they're doing the full bed thing. You know? Yeah, it was pretty cool. It was really cool. You know, and so I often ride pretty rested. You know, but no, it is this phenomenal country, and I really encourage anybody who's thinking about it to you know, really look into it, and it takes some planning. You can do it on your own easily thanks to the internet and web pages. You can book everything you want. You don't have to do an expensive guided tour through some of these trekking companies. You really can. Just pick 1 or 2 hikes that you want to do and reserve them, and spaces on them, and then work everything in between. And I'm serious about not having to rent a car. You really don't. New Zealand's really dependent on mass transit, or not mass, but public transportation. They just, you know, it's just the way gas is so goddamn expensive down there that everybody, you know, turns to public transportation, and it's really easy to do. Yes?
What are the best months to travel in?
It's a very good question. It's opposite season. And what happens in New Zealand is in December, you combine Christmas with kids' summer vacation. So December through mid-January, you're competing with the New Zealanders. Not that you can't do it then. I always said that by far the best time is February. Kids are back at school, families are back at work. The weather's more stable in February than any other time of the year, and that's important, especially if you're doing alpine crossings. And these alpine crossings are not technical. You don't need ice axes or crampons, or you're following a trail. But still, they're high, and they're above the tree line. And so stable weather, one, you feel safer in it, and 2, you get these great views because it's not raining. And so February's the best. First half of March is very good as well. I never went in April, because things are starting to deteriorate then. So I always went generally January, February, March. I went one year in November, end of November. I didn't like it. The weather was more dicey, and no, February's by far the best.
So what changes have you seen since 1980 up until recently?
Well, one thing, the food's phenomenal. 1980, it was like English cooking, you know. Just like that. They didn't have decent coffee. Can you imagine that? They drank tea. Didn't have peanut butter. You literally couldn't buy peanut butter down there. The staple of mine when backpacking. No, the food's very good. the Asian restaurants are wonderful. They got latte places all in every major city and stuff like that. Transportation's pretty good. They're more organized now. In 1980, they had no reservation systems. It's better organized, and they depend on it. Their tourism is built around the outdoors. It really is. And trekking or tramping is a huge part of it. So they've really done a good, the Great Walk program itself is in that direction. But the transportation set there, it's easy to do, especially for overseas visitors, which they depend on heavily. They made it easier for us to reserve places in the lot or in the huts and so forth. And that was really important. And I'm big into fly fishing, so it's also easier for me to get a lot of their classic streams now. You reserve a day to fish them, you know, even when they're walking places like, you know, the Greenstone Trail, the Greenstone River. So, but they made it, even I can do that, get online and reserve in advance if I get enough time to reserve spots as I hike this track that I'm allowed to fish these certain sections. So that's the biggest thing. I think transportation, I'll tell you the biggest difference. In 1980, I had to stop in Honolulu, Hawaii, because planes had to refuel. That was a bummer. In the middle of the night, they get you up, haul your ass off that plane, and then, you know, you get back on. It was just very disruptive. Now it's a nice 10-hour nonstop flight.
How big a pack do you carry, like on the Milford track? How big a pack would you be carrying? What weight?
Well,
what size? What year?
The thing you can eliminate: tent, thermal rest pad, the Milford, your stove and fuel, and we're just talking public huts. We're not talking the private ones like he was talking about. So that's quite a bit of weight. Also, you're thinking, okay, at night I'm going to be in a hut with heat, so I can eliminate some of my clothing. Even when I get wet, I can dry it out by the next morning. So that's more weight for a lot of people. I don't know. Maybe I could get away with 30 pounds, 35 pounds. You know, the thing about New Zealand tracks, the vast majority, the Milford, the Rupert, they're 3 or 4 day walks. So, you know, you don't have to carry quite as much. It's not like you're going to Isle Royal, you're doing the Greenstone in 5 or 6 days, right? They're half that length, and you can carry a little less food. And here's a great thing about New Zealand. Every hut has Vegemite in it. I really think that, you know, foreigners buy that stuff because, you know, it looks cool, and then they taste it, and then they leave it in the hut. So if you just have crackers, you can probably survive the entire trek. Yeah. Anyhow. Hey, thanks, guys. I'm going to be at my table. If you want to buy a book and talk to me,